Welcome to The Real Deal, where it's all about real estate and related businesses in central Massachusetts and northeastern Connecticut. And now, your host, Anthony Shabbat of Shabbat & Associates.
Hey everybody, and welcome to The Real Deal Business Podcast. My name is Anthony Shabbat of Shabbat & Associates Real Estate Group of EXP. And on today's episode of the podcast, I have a very special guest. His name is Michael Weaver. We've been friends for a long time. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Mike?
So I'm a local author, at least right now I'm here. I grew up in the area and I've got a background in original background's engineering, but also martial arts, self-defense, mind, body, philosophy, and that kind of all gets poured into these types of endeavors. This is the new book, and it's book number 2, and it's called Analogical Geometry. It's book 1, and what it really does is it goes through and gets rid of numbers. So it's geometry without numbers. It's how they would have taught it many, many, many years ago, probably from the time of Euclid, Plato. And by getting rid of the numbers, you're actually focusing in on the relationships between the geometric figures. And you're actually looking at the construction. So it's similar to how you might have played with like a compass, straight edge, and a ruler when you were little. So it's all about these patterns and how they unfold with each other and their relations.
Interesting. All right. So you actually, what I like to do before we get too into it is
Sure.
I like to give an overview of your entire, I shouldn't say like in depth of your entire life history, but just an overview where you grew up, where you went to school, what kind of careers did you have in the past that got you into this type of thing, and then about your first book and now into this book a little bit.
Okay. So I went to school, graduated 87 from Killingly, and then went to Penn State and got my degree in engineering. And probably one of the first things with engineering, you're doing a lot of design work, you're doing a lot of, back then it was a lot of drafting type stuff. We had CAD, but it wasn't nowhere near as advanced as it is now. So a lot of things were done by hand. And after I got out of college, I taught martial arts, bounced in some bars for a year, I've got a black belt. But then I went on to do some quality assurance engineering. And there you get into measurement, you start realizing that the tolerance on a blueprint is not just for the blueprint, you can never really measure something exactly. And that kind of blew my mind. You can define something as exactly an inch, but you can't measure exactly an inch, because any type of measurement we do, there's always some type of error. And that's a geometric phenomenon. So those are some of the things that folded into it. And I'd always done a lot with philosophy and mind-body. I taught undergrad classes at Penn State for a while, self-defense, stress management, martial arts. And it's really funny because if you go back far enough, what we look at as separate, the humanities and science or technology, they were all one field of natural philosophy. So that's really where I've tried to go back to in my books.
Okay, so the last time we recorded a podcast, it was about your first book.
Yeah.
And I remember we were both really excited for you about that one because it was kind of like this new world that you were entering into, and but it was really in depth. Can you give us an overview of, like a brief overview, if you can, of
Sure.
your first book? What was the name of the book? What were the overview of it?
Book 1 was called Science and Perception, and it's 7 people sitting in a bar, and they all have different backgrounds, and it's over the course of the year, and they're trying to figure out whether it's possible to model the world in terms of perception. So instead of looking at consciousness arising from solid matter or atoms or anything, what the question that they were asking is it possible that matter is a projection of consciousness and that everything is just mind or perception based? It's really kind of an alchemical view of the world in that sense.
So can you tell us a little bit about what people might have learned from the book, or what they might have come out having read the book in their minds, thinking after it was completely done, after they were done reading it?
From book one, it was probably a holy, what moment, because it really inverts our perception of the world. And that's really what I'm trying to do with the books, is one of the things with geometry, and it continues, so we're continuing with this theme in the two books, is that modern people have this idea that, there's one right way to do something, or there's one right answer. And science and perception kind of turns that on the head, because now you've got two different ways to model the world, and you're not really sure which one is correct or right, because they're both logically sound within their own framework. And the geometry book kind of goes there, but in just as explicitly, but in a slightly different way, where the book gives, say, like 3 different ways to create a hexagon, couple ways to do a square. So which one's right? They all work. So you're looking at it, there's many different ways to get to the same destination.
Yeah, I could totally see that making sense. It's like a Rubik's Cube, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can solve it. There's a bunch of different ways that you can do it. Some people solve it this way, some people solve it another way, but it all ends up in the same.
Exactly.
Or if a couple is arguing or they're having a misunderstanding, and then you hear one side of the story, you're like, oh man, I can't believe that person did that to them. And then you hear the other side of the story, and you're like, well, I can't believe I didn't realize that your side of the story is actually totally understandable too. So
and there's a lot of it with these books. It's the idea of bringing back that 3 to 5 year old curiosity. Instead of saying, well, I've got the answer, it's more like, ooh, what about this and what about this? So when you get used to that questioning phase, that approach to life of questioning things again, then all of a sudden you stop worrying about who's right and wrong, and whether you start actually listening to the other person's perspective, and you start opening yourself up to more than one view.
Well, that's pretty interesting, Mike. I'm not sure about this book because I haven't read it yet, but can you give us like an overview of what people will find when they start? How can you get the book?
Okay, so you can get the book directly on Amazon, and you just go into Amazon, look up Analogical Geometry, and it should pop up. If it doesn't pop up immediately, you can also type in Analogical Geometry Michael Weaver, and it'll pop up. Look for the seashell. And one of the big things with it is really trying to tie nature back to science and technical skills. That's really important, because the original philosophers, the people that created geometry and math, they were really trying to understand nature. They weren't trying to strip their ideas away from nature. They were actually trying to kind of emulate and understand nature and model it.
Mm-hmm. All right, so you said that there were characters in the first book.
Mm-hmm.
Is it kind of a similar thing with the second book? Are there characters, or is it completely different?
This one's completely different. Yeah. This one's set up more like a textbook.
Okay.
So it's actually got about 700 illustrations, and compass, straight edge, stylus, pen or pencil, and you actually get to play with the constructions. So it's step by step. It's a textbook, but it's meant for someone who wants to kind of play and try and see if they can, figure out how to do some of these patterns. And then you start seeing how all these different shapes are related to each other from a very simple set of constructions.
Are there some examples that you can share with us? Maybe any?
Sure.
Are there any that are kind of simple to understand for a newbie?
Yeah. So one of the ones that absolutely blew me away and started getting me going in this direction is, if in engineering it's difficult to cut things in half that are odd sizes. And with a compass and straight edge, traditional construction, doesn't matter how long something is, in 1, 2, 3 steps, you can chop a line completely in half without any measurement in terms of numbers. So it doesn't matter how big it is. Same thing with an angle. you can actually create a square in, I don't know how many steps, but just with a compass and a straight edge, and not even having anything to give a right angle, you can actually create a square. And this gives some insight into possibly how Egyptians may have been able to create the pyramids, which is interesting because it's through relation. They would stretch a rope out, and with that rope you can carve out a circle in the sand, and then you can stretch the rope and ping it down for a straight line. And using those simple techniques, you can actually end up with very, very accurate right angles and things like that without measuring or calculating with numbers.
All right, I'm gonna try doing this.
Did you pause this?
It's not gonna work. Nope.
No.
I'm trying to do two things here, so I apologize.
Okay. No worries.
But I'm trying to do a split screen with this thing for the first time, but
Cool.
it's not quite. Oh, there we go. Let's see.
Is it splitting?
It looks like it's going. All right,
You
it's
got
going.
the split screen.
All right,
Cool.
cool. So now, me as a total newbie with this, I'm trying to understand. Do you actually teach courses on this?
Not right now.
Okay. Are you
But this
thinking about-
book is set up as a textbook.
So you're thinking about you could actually teach courses online? with this?
I could teach online, but what I'd really like to see is people adopt some of these methods. Because a lot of teachers, if they're having trouble engaging with their class, if they're trying to figure out a different way, they don't have time to structure curriculum. And with my background with the web, the graphics design, especially like database and information architecture, what I'm really doing is taking information architecture and applying it to teaching at this point, especially with this book. So it's a way for them to introduce concepts in a simplified manner. They're not watered down, it's still very powerful, but you're introducing geometry in more of a pure form. It's just geometry. You don't have to be able to write out proofs, so you're not testing the student on their reading ability right away. You're not testing them on their ability to do calculations with numbers. You're actually, this book presents geometry stripped down to just geometry, and then later on you can add the calculations and the writing.
What I would like to do, because I really want to understand this, and I
Yeah.
just feel like it's completely outside of my realm of understanding.
Sure.
What I would love to do is to have a Zoom with you where you just go through exercises with me. Here's
Yeah.
one exercise. Here's an example of, here's what we're working with. Tell me about the line, how you cut the
Yeah.
line into 3 pieces.
Right, we can do
Or,
that.
you know, so how you create a perfect square or something like that.
Yeah,
And I think if you were to do that and show me, because I learned by example.
yeah, that's what this whole book is.
Okay.
This whole book is step-by-step examples. And that's what I think is really neat about this. It's a 628-page book with over 700 illustrations. So it's meant for you to sit down either with a pencil, pen, straight edge, and play, which is really neat. And I've seen, there's one guy at the coffee shop, and he's working on stuff, and it's just neat to see someone playing, experimenting, because it's like anything else. We learn by doing. You can't just think your way through life. It's like you're
Yeah.
going to experiment. Martial arts, you're going to get kicked in the head.
Yeah.
But that's how you learn not to get kicked in the head.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, you learn
So-
by making mistakes.
yeah. And that's really what this is set up for. It's for people to play and experiment.
Very cool. So the one line thing, is there any way you can use that as an example? How that would go? How long does it take to explain an example like that? Or is it too much to get into?
To sketch it out, it
Yeah.
takes like 2 minutes,
Yeah.
not even. It's
Can I reposition one of these cameras?
Sure.
And actually we can
You want me to
focus?
get some-
I'll get some paper.
yeah. Let me get some white paper. And
Right here, paper. I got pens
I've
galore.
got pen. You got pens?
Yeah.
All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna start, and use a straight edge. So there's no markings on here. So we're not really measuring at all. And we're just gonna do a line of whatever length. No way for me to actually know how long it is. So now the question is, how do we find the center? And where it gets interesting is, at least to me, with a compass and straight edge, so you put the point on one end, and you put the stylus on the other, and then all you do, it's going to be an approximation because this thing's wiggling a little bit, but you do your arc, measured from end to end of the line, being sure to go past what you think the center might be. Okay, this is walking a little bit. And then you measure the other end to the other end. And you can see that where those two intersect, and the odd thing is because the error is equal on either side, that's the line cut in half.
All right, Mike, great stuff on your book. I'm very happy for you, proud
Thanks,
of you,
Tony.
and happy to know you. So now I want to just tell everybody how they can get more information about the book. Where can they buy it? Where can they meet you to get a signed copy? That type of stuff.
So you can buy it on Amazon directly, and you'll actually get it quicker than if I order it, because Amazon likes to take their time with author copies. So just go on Amazon, look up Analogical Geometry, Michael Weaver, you'll find it right there. So this book's kind of a hybridization of old and new.
I like this layout of this website too, actually. You said something about wiki, but it's not a wiki.
Wikipedia.
Yeah, it's
Wikipedia's engine that I'm using right now.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Actually, you used to do web design by HTML code. I remember hand coding web.
A lot of web design background, but for me, because of all the research that I do for these books, that gets to be a lot to manage. And what's nice is I can actually go in, do a page mock-up, play with some writing, and then go back, edit it, and just like Wikipedia, it will do multiple versions, so I can roll things back and everything.
Pretty cool.
And then I can stuff research in there too, and just hit search and go through it just like you would on Wikipedia. And I find my own research that I pulled and figure out where a reference came from.
So I don't know if you have a phone number, email address, web address. One more time for everybody, how to get in touch with you.
Okay, mythandmind.com is the web address. And you can hit me up at info@mythandmind.com directly. That email goes to me right now. So
excellent. So Michael Weaver, author of his new book,
Analogical Geometry, Book 1, which means there'll be another book. This one has no numbers. The next book I'll actually talk about where numbers come from.
And the first book again was
Science and Perception.
Science and Perception.
Yeah.
Very nice. All
Also
right.
available on Amazon.
All right, excellent, Mike. Well, maybe we'll have to do this again for round 3 and
Book 2
yeah.
of this series.
Right,
which will
yeah.
be Book 3.
And maybe we'll even have some better technology to record this podcast on, although I'm pretty happy with this so far. I think it's
nice.
not bad.
It's a good setup.
So, all right.
Thanks so
everybody.
much, Tony.
No problem. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
And thanks so much for tuning in.
Thanks everybody for watching. For more information, you can get a hold of Mike at the number or at the email address that he provided, or check out his website. My name's Anthony Shabbat from Shabbat & Associates Real Estate Group of EXP. If you're looking to buy or sell real estate in Northeast Connecticut or Central Massachusetts, please let me know. I do residential, commercial, restaurants, retail, you name it, we do it. Drone videos, virtual tours, floor plans. If it has to do with marketing and real estate, we do it all. Thanks a lot everybody for watching, and have a great day.
Thanks so much.